this evening, we're actually going to start in a child's pose. The reason I'm laughing is I've just noticed there's loads of beagle hairs over my mat. So that's going to be great to roll around. I'm not sure where they've come from, but well, obviously a beagle, but I didn't notice that before. So going to come down into child's pose. I'm actually going to take a wide setting for this first run. We're actually going to come into child's pose a couple of times this evening. So wide knees, toes together, heels and bums together. And I'm just going to bring my head down to the floor. So I want to try and sort of lengthen the spine out. We're going to be here for a few minutes. You can have the hands out in front. You can have your hands under your head. You can have your hands down by your toes. You can have your hands over your back. Whatever feels right. You want to make sure that you're happy with your knees, your ankles, lower back especially, so that you actually can relax your shoulders, let the elbows sink out to the side if the hands are underneath your head. And we'll just let ourselves breathe. So we're doing a lot of work on sort of inner groins, inner thighs this week, so they're feeling a little bit tight. So I know it looks like I'm in a nice position in this child's pose, but this is quite strong stretch and sort of that hamstring and inner groin area. So I know that the work I've done this week has been effective, and I know that this stretch is working. It's kind of a good thing all round. Feels like I've made use of my time. And just slowing the breath down, let it be as slow and as natural as possible. So sometimes we sort of artificially slow the breath down, really make it long, not necessarily deeper, but we just concentrate on how we breathe in. So we try and keep it very smooth and even. This class this evening, we're just going to let it happen, see where we are. I will mention to you when we need to lift up, so you don't need to lift your head to check that we're still in the pose, missed anything. I'm sure if anything exciting happens, I will mention it. So we're going to lift up slowly, and we're going to come into Sphinx pose. So just slowly bringing myself up onto elbows and knees, and then taking the feet out towards the end of the mat. And I'm going to have the elbows underneath the shoulders. I'm actually just going to very lightly interlace the hands together. So you could take Sphinx pose traditionally with the forearms parallel to each other, but I'm going to let them sort of come in towards each other a little bit. Just be vigilant that your elbows don't slide out to the sides. And I'm going to try and let that lower spine compress down and let the shoulders relax. So they'll feel like they're lifting up towards the sky. The chest sort of sinks down to the floor in between your shoulders. So it actually does stretch out the shoulder muscles and across the front of your chest. Head position really is of choice. So if you like to keep your head up, great. If you like to have your head down, also great. And I'm going to let myself come down onto my belly and bring the feet together on the center line. I'm going to take half frog. I'm going to take the right knee out to the side, 90 degrees. Let the shin follow the line of the mat. That's running parallel, toes out to the side. You can turn the head to the same side if that feels comfortable. And I'm going to actually do the half frog in two halves. We're going to put a sphinx pose or a seal pose in between each side. So we'll be here for a few minutes. Again, you can let the chin be on the hands or the forehead. Elbows out wide. You will notice that your body sort of changes shape after being on the floor for a minute or so. Your ribs sort of understand that there's gravity working on them in a different way, and they sort of mold around a little bit. That can affect the position of your shoulders. So if you feel that you need to sort of wiggle your elbows out a little further and get a little closer to the floor naturally, then allow yourself to take that option. Just making yourself comfortable, maximizing the opportunity to let go. We'll slide that leg back on. And we'll take the feet out at hip distance apart again, the bootlaces down. Up onto the elbows to start with into Sphinx pose and see how that feels. And then if it feels good, we'll just lift the elbows away from the ground. Let the shoulders draw back a little bit more, press into that sort of mid-lower back area. And you can walk the hands in as close as you want. You go onto the internet and have a look at seal pose. You'll see people that are able to sort of take this to a more extreme level because their backs make it available to them, where the torso is almost 90 degrees from the floor. I barely get to 45 with my back. And some would say that that's sort of average range. Whatever moves you do make, always make them slow and careful. Just sort of testing out how it feels. And we always say that if it hurts, don't do it. And that's particularly true of sitting in a yin pose. You want to challenge yourself, but at the same time, you don't want to harm yourself. So you have to decide, can I breathe easily? Am I being a bit competitive with myself? Am I just trying to do more each week rather than waiting for my body to accept the pose and move itself deeper into the posture? That is, something of a difficult choice to make. Sometimes we have to learn by getting it wrong, and sometimes that can be, wrong to our detriment, or it can be wrong that we don't try enough. It's a very difficult balance to sort itself into. Kind of have to follow your intuition with that. Anyway, we're able to bring the elbows down. You'll feel the release. We'll come down slowly as we've done before. We'll bring the legs together onto the center line of the mat. On the exhale, we'll take the left leg out 90 degrees, shin parallel, and just sinking gently down to the ground and seeing if that feels different to the first side. Which I can say this evening definitely feels different straight from the get-go. A few things borderline beginning to cramp, which didn't feel on the previous side. So I definitely noticed there's some difference between side A and B for myself. And I'd probably say about 50% of the time when I practice yin practice, I notice things like that. Sometimes subtle, sometimes quite obvious, but rarely do I find my body when I'm doing a posture to one side and then the opposite side feel that it's exactly the same. And some of that might be that you've already done one side and the nervous system balanced itself out and then you're starting again. But some of it might just be that it is, in fact, different. Take a breath in. I'm going to slide that left leg back in. And I'm going to roll onto my back, keeping the head the same end of the mat, so keeping it nice and easy. And I've already got the bolster down by the side of my body. It's on my right side. I'm not going to use that just at the moment, but it's there so it's within reach easily without me having to lift off the floor. I'm going to wriggle a little bit to get a nice long back and then walk the feet in towards me on the center line, knees together. And I'm going to take a figure four. So I'm going to take the left leg to the sky, turn the toes out, bend the knee. So the ankle bone goes to the outside. I do want to keep the foot flexed towards the knee to look after knee ligaments. But I'll come up onto the tiptoes of the right foot. I'm going to draw the right leg in. And I'm going to take my left hand through the center and either clasp the hands around the front of the shin or the back of the hamstring, whatever's easy for you to reach. If you notice that as you come into this, it pulls on your neck and your chin strangely moves to the front end of the mat as if it's got a life of its own, then probably want to put a block underneath the head so it's not pressing into the neck or the shoulder. I'm going to release the right foot to the floor. So stretch out the left leg up to the sky and roll the ankle around a few times. Quite a long time to hold that flexion. And then bring the foot back down. I can take the opposite leg up, turn the toes out, bend the knee, pivot the shin bone over the thigh, flex the foot, take a breath in, come up onto the tiptoes, draw that left leg in, right hand through the center, left hand around the outside, left leg. And just make a note of keeping a nice long neck. Try and relax the shoulders. If you notice that your spine does round a lot and fiercely draws your tailbone away from the floor, again, you might want to think about using that block under the head. The blocks are there and props are there to assist us in our practice. Not a sort of a cheap way of doing the posture. Think of it as a way of assisting you so that you can get further with less effort. It's a bit like driving your car in economy mode. You still get to the same place, takes the same amount of time, but you just use a little bit less fuel. And the more considerate we are of our engine, the longer it lasts us, and the happier it works. Who thought car analogies in the middle of the yoga class? And I'm going to release from there as well. It can be a big stretch for the sort of outer hip area. Bring the foot down. Make sure you feel like the spine is aligned to the center line of the mat. And I've got my bolster over to my right side. I'm going to lengthen my right leg out down the mat and move my hips a couple of inches or more, comfortable distance over to the left. I'm going to bring the left foot up onto the thigh, and then I'm going to roll the legs over and see if I can get my knee and my ankle on the bolster, which might require me to move around a little bit. And I'm going to use my right hand to just give a little bit of assistance to keep the knee on the bolster. Again, I feel that quite strong around the sort of outside of the glutes, high up. I'm going to try and keep the shoulders flat to the floor, put the arm out to the side. And then looking away lightly from the bolster. Bottom leg, just straight down the center line. Doesn't have to be active. You can let it relax. And then ease the foot back. Roll the spine back to the floor so the hips come back in. Center myself. I slowly slide the heels out down the mat, and then I can roll the bolster over my legs with the least amount of disruption, and certainly not having to lift my spine up off of the mat. I'll take it out to the opposite side. Arms come out wide. This time the right leg comes in, move a few inches out to the right. Right foot onto the top of the left thigh, roll it over. Find the bolster, move it around, make sure the ankle and the knee are supported. Then using a little bit of weight with the, in this case, the left arm, hold it down, and then try and get the shoulders to join in. And just turning the head the opposite way to the bolster. And so if you can encourage those shoulders splatter to the floor. Oh man, it's time to come back out of that as well. Just releasing, flying back into the middle. I'm going to move the bolster off to the side a little bit, so just as far as my fingers will allow to push out the way. Draw the knees in towards the body and have a little rock from side to side. And then with an exhalation, we're going to roll over towards the right side. Let the legs come down, bring the hands underneath, bring yourself back onto all fours, and we're going to take child's pose. But this time, child's pose with the knees hip distance apart, shins parallel. And sitting back, very much the diaphragm sitting on top of the thighs. I'm going to bring the hands underneath the forehead. If you can get your forehead all the way to the ground, with the hands being underneath, it's fine. And likewise, if you need to use props, and you don't really want to have your head just dangling in fresh air. It will be a little trickier to breathe, but we still want to see if we can keep a long breath. This is going to stretch out the
intercostal muscles, so internal and external versions of those. You might feel that a little bit sort of in the back of your ribs. Just starting to breathe into spaces that you don't often use.
And then time to lift out from there. Come into saddle pose. So I'm going to take the block and moving forwards a little bit as well along the mat, and taking the block portrait down towards the heels, and then bringing the knees together. So the feet go wide, and I'm sitting down gently. Now, if that feels like too much strain on your knees, hopefully the child's pose will have opened them up a little bit. If it feels like too much, then you want to have the brick sitting on top of the block, so it's underneath both sitting bones, so you're truly supported. Always let ourselves relax a little bit. I think I've probably mentioned this before, but if you've got a high instep in your feet, this can feel pretty intense on the bootlace side of the foot. So if you're built like that, like I am, either having a very good high density mat underneath you, or a towel to sort of roll a few layers, over the top of each other, so you've got a little bit of cushioning to make it a little bit more agreeable. Because it feels like someone's sticking a drawing pin into your foot. It's very hard to relax and concentrate on anything else other than that. Now, whilst I'm here, I'm going to start to rearrange the bolster and take that behind me, going across the mat. I'm going to come into a sort of one-legged version of this pose, but recline it at the same time. So I'm just going to use the fingers to press into the floor, lift up a little bit, and I'm going to use my right foot to move the block a little bit more over towards the left side, and then allow myself to bring the right foot forwards. So I need to take the block over to the right side, not left side. Ooh, beginner's mistake. And then sitting back gently, I want to get my sitting bone onto the block. I have the heel to the outside on the left leg, knee pointing forwards rather than out to the side, quite important thing. And then this knee, right leg can either stay high knee or you can lengthen out, your choice. I'm going to take the hands behind and ease myself back gently onto the bolster with my elbows. I'm actually going to lift the buttocks off just a little bit, so I'm able to tuck the pubic bone forwards a little bit more, rather than having an arch in the lower back. I just want a sort of very neutral spine feeling. And I want to make sure that in this case, the bent knee of my left leg is resting against the ground. If it's lifted off, getting a little bit too enthusiastic, you need to back out a little bit and bring yourself up. So you can lift up higher onto the sort of elbows, or you might even need to use your hands rather than coming down onto forearms. I'm able to let the shoulders relax a little bit. So again, they're going to sort of hunch up a little bit, different direction to Sphinx pose, which was pushing back. This is now sort of pushing up and forwards. Head position, again, your choice. But some people will be able to get all the way down to be able to lie on top of that bolster. And if that's the case, you turn it from across the mat to lengthways down the center line. Make sure that your head is fully supported, not hanging off the end. That's in here. We're going to bring ourselves back up. Going to take a breath in. Push the shoulders down. Draw the abdominal muscles in towards the spine. Bring a hand underneath. Press my way back up. I'm going to use the hands underneath so I can come back up onto all fours. I'll move the block over to the opposite side. When you're ready, I'm going to take the left foot forwards. Allow the heel to be to the outside, knee down the center line. One sitting bone resting on the block, other sitting bone fresh air. Take a breath. Ease my way in. Again, take the little lift, so just to press the pubic bone forwards. So to move around and adjust the block into the right place. And then just enjoying that tremendous stretch down the front of the quad, but feeling it also at the knee and the hip flexor end as well. Again, just trying to relax into the shoulders. And then that will be enough of that. So again, shoulders down, draw the belly in, use the exhales to lift up. And I'm just going to lift the front leg and stretch it out. So I can roll onto the right side and actually take the block out from underneath. Let's give the back of the legs a little bit of a shake out. And then we're going to come into shoestring legs. So I'm going to shoelace legs. I'm going to tuck the ankles underneath, come up onto all fours, and bring the knees together. I'm going to take the left knee forwards, just crossing the legs over, and then squeeze the thighs together, making any adjustments that you need to, and then taking the feet out wider and start to roll back. So I'm going to use the block again underneath my bottom. So just put that into place as I arrive. And then I'm going to take that into a twist as well. I'm going to twist to the left side. So I'm going to use the right arm to sort of brace against the upper leg and just bring the left hand around towards the right hip and towards that rear shoulder. The idea is to have pretty much zero gap between the thighs. One leg just slightly pressed over the top of the other. Get a release. Fingers on the floor, we come forwards again. I'll move the block out to the side. So I get it out of the way first, untangle the legs. Up onto all fours again, knees together. And this time it's the right leg that's going to go forwards. Cross over. Again, so wiggling the thighs together a little bit and taking the feet out wider, as wide as you comfortably can. Sit gently back, just being careful the knees and ankles are happy. And then bringing the block underneath. Once you arrive, we'll take a breath and we'll twist over to the right side this time. And I got a release from there. Fingers to the floor again to lift up. Angle the legs. And to the front end of the mat. Going to push, bolster out to the very end of the mat. So just kicking that out of the way basically. And then from the all fours position, I'm going to make sure my hands are a little wider than my shoulders. Bring the right foot through. So I want to make sure the knee is over the ankle. And then I'm going to walk the left leg as far back as I comfortably can. Come up onto the fingertips first and then bring the forearms onto this front thigh. Take a breath and let the legs sink forwards very gently. Now, if you feel precarious, if your balance doesn't feel great through this bottom foot, and then do bring the fingers down to the floor and still let your sort of body weight sink into the thigh.
We're just getting a little bit more flexion into this front ankle. We're letting the hips sink down, and we're getting a big stretch into those hip flexors. And it's a good way of stretching out the psoas muscle. Won't be here terribly long. And sometimes, again, if your balance feels a bit wibbly wobbly, if you take a brick and just sort of place it underneath the left hand in this case when you're using the right leg, that allows you to sort of get a little bit more of a sinky feeling into that front leg and into the groin. I'm going to take a last breath there, let myself move back out. Take the props out of the way if you need to. Come back onto all fours. As I said, we weren't going to stay there very long. Hands a little wider than the shoulders. Leg comes through. This time it's the left leg. Walk the right foot back a little bit further if you can. Up onto the fingertips. And then let yourself sink into that front leg. And for some reason, balance felt better on the other side, so I was quite happy to use the forearms on the thigh this side. Don't know if I'm just offset my foot a little bit more, but it doesn't feel quite so easy to relax into. So I want to be able to take advantage of the stretch. If you're fighting your balance, then you're going to tighten everything up and kind of works the opposite way against you. So we're only here for a short period of time, about a minute actually in the posture. I'll let myself come out of that. Let's move the props out of the way. And I'm going to come into Shavasana. So just sweeping the feet towards the front of the mat. And use the block underneath the back of the head for a little bit of comfort. I'm going to run a minute or so over this evening. It's not astonishingly overrun, but we are a little bit more than the hour. Head onto the block, feet out to the corner edges, a little wriggle through the spine, let the legs relax, hands by the side, palms up as you close your eyes, last little lick of the lips, and then we'll just let ourselves sink into the mat. We'll begin to bring ourselves from Shavasana, breathing a little deeper, wiggling the fingers and toes. Let's bring our awareness back into our body. We'll start to roll the wrists and the ankles, which really starts to alive ourselves up from tip to toe. We'll take the stretch out when we feel ready. Just following your instincts to whatever kind of stretch feels good. And if you haven't already, we'll slide the heels along the floor to bring the knees gently in towards the body, a leg at a time. We'll take our hands around the shin loosely. Get a little bit of a sideways rock going. And then we're going to time with an exhalation to roll fully over to the right side. And so legs are down, we turn the chest over, bring the hands underneath, and press away on the exhale very easily from the floor. And now we can come into an easy seated posture, whatever that is for you this evening. A little wriggle through the spine, get nice and long, and then we'll bring the hands into our hearts. Closing the eyes, taking a longer breath here. Begin to slowly exhale in a chin drop. As you feel your belly drawn to your spine, let yourself follow the bow to the floor, seeing your practice for the evening. As breath comes back into the body, let the spine lift. Let the head follow, the eyes open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Hope you enjoyed a generous selection of stretches and hope to see you on the mat again soon.